to the Eastern Conference Finals between the Celtics and the Heat.
From Jason Tatum, I don't think anybody on the Heat team can defend it.
This rising superstar has been just magnificent. Tatum, sidestep, three-pointer, puts it in. The third quarter has been the best quarter for the Heat so far in these playoffs. What a turnaround here in this third period. This is a Miami Heat avalanche.
The start that Jason Tatum had sparked something in Jimmy Butler.
I don't care if it's a big stage or he's watching. I know why I do what I do.
Back in Miami tonight for Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the Heat and the Celtics, and it's going to be a good one. Jimmy Buckets got plenty of them in Game 1, scoring 27 of his 41 points in the second half to beat Boston 118-107. To talk Game 2, we bring in our friend Brian Windhorst, who's also taking in that Miami sunshine. Wendy, the Celtics have to figure out a way to stop Jimmy Butler. One way to do that would be to have the Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart, on the court. What's the latest on him and Al Horford?
Christine, we got good news and bad news for the Celtics injury front right now. So Marcus Smart has been upgraded to probable. I do believe he's going to try to play tonight. But within the last few minutes, the Celtics just announced that Derek White, who's one of their key defensive perimeter players, is going to miss tonight's game due to personal reasons. So one step forward, one step back in terms of depth. This is a factor because one of the reasons why the Heat were so successful in the second half of Game 1 is that they attacked Peyton Pritchard, who had to play way more minutes than normal. And now, even if Marcus Smart is effective and is able to come back and play close to normal minutes, which we may not want to assume because he's got this sprained foot, with no Derek White, they're going to have to, again, rely on Pritchard. So that's one thing. Now the Al Horford issue. He is listed as doubtful for tonight, and that is not a surprise because in health and safety protocols, typically the minimum you're going to be out is 5 days unless you test out. And testing out has multiple stages and is not simple in terms of timing. So the fact that he would not play in tonight was something the Celtics were prepared for. But they also have the reality that he very well could not be available depending on how he's feeling, depending on how the tests go, for Saturday's Game 3. And you look up and down the Celtics roster. You've got Robert Williams, who is back but still dealing with the knee issue. You've got Jason Tatum dealing with a wrist issue. You've got Jaylen Brown still coming off of a hamstring issue. This is a very good team, but they are not particularly deep. They really only run about 7.5 players. So these injuries are a real threat to this series and their chances at a title.
Wendy, I'm not sure if you know this, but have we found out whether if Al Horford has had a negative test yet or not?
I don't know that. A couple of things that are important, Jay, I can tell you. Al Horford, on the record with the Boston Globe within the last 6 weeks, has said that he is vaccinated. I still am not 100% clear whether he's symptomatic. Ime Udoka, by the way, I should point this out. Ime Udoka missed yesterday's availability due to what the Celtics call the non-COVID illness. And the Celtics have several other positives within their traveling party. So everything right now is a little bit fragile. But The last time we checked with Ime Udoka, he said that Horford, quote, felt fine. So being symptomatic is a factor here. And we don't have an update on how Al is feeling. We'll hopefully get that later today.
Wow. I mean, obviously not having Al Horford really hurts the Boston Celtics just because of his ability to spread the floor. But also, Wendy, the experience, right? Like, that is a guy, he's a constant communicator, one of the backbones of the defense, a guy that can communicate to the guards what all the actions are on every single ball screen as that changes due to personnel. And also, like, his ability to make shots, and that allows Bam Adebayo to literally roam the paint. And also, that makes it difficult for guys like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown to even get into those gaps to find a way to finish at the rim or kick it out to three-point shooters. But the thing that is interesting most of all is Marcus Smart trying to come back and not be fully healthy. With now Derek White being out, you're still going to need to utilize Peyton Pritchard. And I said it before you came on, Wendy, and I love Peyton Pritchard. I watched him play at Oregon. He's one heck of a player, tough as nails, made some difficult shots for them in Game 1. But there's certain players as an NBA player, when you see them walk on the floor, if you get to an Eastern Conference Finals or a semis or a world championship, or heck, even back in college, if a guy gets hurt, you see him You know, like, all right, you are going to be the guy. And how you play today will dictate whether your team can stay in this game or whether your team gets beat up. Because Spo will find a way to get Peyton Pritchard to guard Jimmy Butler or get Peyton Pritchard to guard who they want in all the action. And that is a major concern for Ime Udoka and the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, and one thing I will say that, the Heat are missing Kyle Lowry. He will miss the game, but they are 7-0 without Kyle Lowry in these playoffs. And one of the reasons is because they get tremendous play off the bench from Gabe Vincent, a guy who's an undrafted player who they've developed throughout the season. The Heat doesn't have the same top line talent, I don't think, as the Celtics, although I'm sure a Heat fan or somebody from the Heat organization would be glad to debate me or you on that issue. But the Celtics' depth is not comparable to the Heat's depth. The Heat can really comfortably play 9 or 10 players in this series without even breaking a sweat. And again, they would probably argue they could go deeper, but realistically, 9 or 10 players. The Celtics are just not at that factor right now. And again, the rest situation, even though we're into game 2 when there was no travel, the rest situation still favors the Heat. So, a real tough spot for the Celtics to be in. I will say that they are very resilient. Remember, they were down 3 different times in the series to the Bucks, 1-0, 2-1, and 3-2. They have won 4 road games in this playoff so far. So I am certainly not counting them out, but the hand that they're holding continues to deteriorate a little bit.
Wendy's not counting them out. Jay Will, do you feel like Boston absolutely needs to win this game tonight in order to make this a series?
No, I do not. I still believe they can go home and defend home court, but I'm extremely concerned about this series right now. And for me, not having Marcus Smart fully healthy, Wendy, you went through all the names. Robert Williams coming off that back injury. You talk about Jason Tatum, the dunk on Giannis, the wrist injury, how he's dealing with that. Jaylen Brown coming off injury to a degree. How Marcus Smart guards the likes of Jimmy Butler will be critical to tonight's game. And that will be tested each and every possession. And now not having Derek White, another guy that can initiate your offense or even just spread the floor once again, we understand how pivotal that is when you play a team like the Miami Heat who can shrink the floor when you get into those gaps. Guys have to be ready to shoot. That's a major loss. So, I mean, look, Marcus Smart can help them initiate the offense. I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have to explode. Those two need to be prolific tonight. They need to be prolific. And you need to get some kind of Herculean performance from Marcus Smart in order to compensate for all the pieces that are missing. Because here's the one thing I do know about the Miami Heat. And you talked about Wendy living down there for a short stint. I lived down there for 3 years. I spent some time with some of those guys. When they smell blood in the water, they are sharks. Like, they pounce on that kind of stuff. Or most teams might come in, you might say, well, do they really respect their opponent? They always respect their opponent. And they will play even harder now that they do smell blood in the water.
And they're also a very good home team throughout the season and in these playoffs. They've been terrific here in Miami. The one thing I'll say, the Celtics didn't feel miserable about that outcome in Game 1. They won 3 of the 4 quarters. Now, the third quarter was abysmal. It was an absolute devastating situation. So I know that that's not much of a consolation prize, but the Celtics do feel like they had some traction in some areas. And even though Marcus Smart may not be 100%, having him in there to initiate offense should help Jason Tatum. Where the Celtics lost control of the game was in the third quarter, and they were having to rely on Jason Tatum to initiate offense. He had 6 turnovers in the third quarter alone. Now, 2 of them were Jimmy Butler swatting his shots. It had nothing to do with who was the point guard. But several times he got his pocket picked or threw a pass because he was having to play more point guard, having to bring the ball up. So that should free Tatum up a little bit. And he did, even though he would have, what would be called, a below average or below acceptable game because his second half wasn't so great. He still scored over 30 points yet again. He is averaging over 30 over his last 6 games. So Tatum is there. Jaylen Brown is there. The Celtics are still very potent. It's just that their margin for error, which Jay, at this point in the playoffs, your margin for error is so important. Their margin for error is getting very narrow against a team in Miami that doesn't make a lot of mistakes.
Wow.
You mentioned that third quarter being abysmal. Miami won that one 39-14. So, yes, it was not great. Thanks so much, Wendy.
All right,
Good
Wendy.
seeing you. Have fun in Miami.
Stay cool down there.
Still Still to come on First Take, the Warriors are just 3 wins away from the NBA Finals, but is there anyone left in the playoffs?